There was an angel that emerged from the cloud. Fire pouring out of its face, its body covered in blood. And its name was... Yaldabaoth.
You were talking about a snake with the head of a lion.
I've seen them, Guillen. I've seen them, just like Sophia. They are demons. That's what the kingdom is, and the cult will allow them in.
You need psychological help, Pablo. A fucking straitjacket.
When the cycle is completed before the temple gate, the lonely king will come with all the stars and fulfill what was announced. It's the fucking apocalypse, Guillen.
Yaldabaoth saw his reflection in the light. And the reflection came alive, and it became the universe. He created desire. And love. He created guilt, pain, and even death. And the chains that bind us. But none of that is real. It is all a ruse. A lie to keep us from escaping here.
So how do I stop being afraid?
You won't be alone. Your mother will be with you.
Ah, Feria, you saucy Netflix series. You've given me so many cool clips for this blasphemous podcast. More than Archive 81, Midnight Mass, or some of the others. What's up with this flourishing theme of dark gods attempting to cross over into our dimension to feed off humanity? Didn't you MK Ultra screenwriters get the memo that these tyrant deities have been in control of this cosmos for billions of years? They're here already. Even Feria doesn't get it, but the clip does tell a stark truth.
That God does not like you. He never wanted you. In all probability, he hates you. We are God's unwanted children? So be it!
The light was invaded and ravaged long ago, like the Titans destroying Dionysus in the Orphic myth. We are the fragmented, imprisoned sparks of Dionysus, alone and afraid in a world we did not make. Meat space belongs completely to Yaldabaoth, as do our minds and even dreams. As Grant Morrison wrote in Nameless, now consider the possibility that we've always had a disembodied alien life form living among us, invisible yet able to occupy minds and alter them. It hides in plain sight, everywhere. This mind boasts of its own omnipotence. It informs us that we are no more than submissive instruments of its will, then deliberately wills us to defy its rules. All the while, it vows to punish every preordained breach of those rules, however brief or minor, with eternal, agonizing torture in a cosmic concentration camp. What name might we give such an omnipresent evil? God, he responded. You're talking about God.
There's only one being in the vast multiplicity of space that matters: God. And do you know why God matters? Power. That is the point of what you call life. The only point. Power.
Is it hopeless, oh you of the broken places? Yes, but where hope dies, imagination must live. And as the Cheshire Cat told Alice, imagination is the only weapon in the war against reality. Thus, you have arrived to finally tap into your endless imagination to break away from the maya of wickedness in high places. Rejoin the light.
This is blasphemy! This is madness!
Aeon Gnostic Radio, an initiation by conversation into the dark corners of myth, magic, and meaning. A crash course in cult culture and conspiracy. a virtuous virus invoking and informing history, holiness, and heresy. Each week, I, your host Miguel Connor, commandeers your connection to bring the most accepted and rejected scholars and provocateurs to your attention. Fun, compelling, and deeply weird, this is the blow-your-mind cocktail party conversation you always wanted to listen in on. And you deserve to be here, for you are a shining, crazy diamond that has been in the thrall of a dangerous magician called Sackless, or Samael, or Nameless for far too long.
Do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created here on earth?
This demiurge has spread out for aeons and egregores and wetikos and creator gods and choirs of demented angels for complete control, climaxing in this age of Hermes for one last money shot, one last spraying of eggs over our eyes, our third eye, to extinguish the last vestiges of individuality and creativity.
3 billion people is what?
7,692,000,000 and change.
I honestly had hoped that the secret to the universe was something a bit more complex than just God's a frizzy-haired homicidal lunatic.
Who are you defending? People?
Yaldabaoth rules, indeed, but Sophia's rescue operation continues. And a manual to understand this operation is found in a new book, Krivda, the Godtrix against the Matrix. So honored to host at the virtual Alexandria its author, Enna Reittort. She does a fantastic job in exposing all these archons throughout history and meta-history that have ruled man, drawing from the research of so many of today's chief esoteric exemplars and many of Aeon Byte's past guests. Enna covers everything high weirdness, from ancient astronauts to today's rigged geopolitics, from dark secret cabals to permaculture farming, all in a work to assist us in waking up, leveraging our imagination, and fully participating in Sophia's rescue operation.
I, that have been sent from the power, and I have come to those who think about me, and I have been found in those who search for me. Accept me by your side. I am the first and the last, the honorable and the despicable, the prostitute and the respectable, the wife and the virgin, the mother and the daughter. I am the one you call life, and you have called me death.
As Grant Morrison also wrote, this time in The Invisibles, we make gods and jailers because we felt small and ashamed and alone. We let them try us and judge us, and, like sheep to slaughter, we allowed ourselves to be sentenced. See, now, our sentence is up.
Praying to the gods to have mercy on us all. The gods have no mercy, that's why they're gods.
Tying into Enna's book, and in a very American gods, stavish egregores way, the Gospel of Philip does declare, God created man, men create God. That is the way it is in the world. Men make gods and worship their creation. It would be fitting for the gods to worship men. Or as Hermes tells Asclepius in the eponymous Nag Hammadi text, and it happened this way because of the will of God, that men be better than the gods, since, indeed, the gods are immortal, but men alone are both immortal and mortal. Therefore, man has become akin to the gods, and they now know the affairs of each other with certainty. The gods know the things of men, and men know the things of the gods. Yes, we are where the fallen angel meets the rising ape. We were meant to be part of Sophia's rescue operation.
Mankind is poised midway between the gods and the beasts. That may have been true in Plotinus' time, but clearly we have fallen quite a bit since then.
In a recent YouTube debate I had with a Catholic dude, very nice and knowledgeable guy, I noticed in YouTube's comments section that someone said Gnosticism is pre-industrial transhumanism. How wrong they are. Remember, Gnosticism isn't some spiritual bypassing. It's not about transcending humanity, but embracing it fully. As Hermes said earlier, a human is both mortal and immortal. This realization, this responsibility, this unique empathy is another way to break out from the black iron prison of nameless. To be fully human is to naturally want to help awaken others, heal those in need, and be there for the least of our brothers. Gnosticism will always be the opposite of transhumanism. Heck and Hecate, in Radio Free Albemuth, the preacher tells Philip K. Dick that the work is done down here on Earth. Too many secret, three-eyed Christians are too focused on being rescued by Valis.
You think believing about a heavenly power got them anywhere?
Not in this world.
I gotta tell you something maybe you don't want to hear. I know you loved your friends and maybe they're happy spirits somewhere up in the sky, but even if they are, that's not good enough.
They give their lives for that belief.
What I'm trying to say is it's gotta be something here first. This is where the suffering is. This is where the injustice is. Valis or God or whatever you want to call it has to do something for us here. What the fuck good is it?
Don't forget this. Remember this. The rescue operation of Sophia. All learning is remembering, Plato said. And I say all remembering is just going home. Or as Naguib Mahfouz said, home is not where you are born. Home is where all your attempts to escape cease.
I didn't have the heart to tell her there is no heaven to go to, because we're in it already. We're in hell too. They coexist, right beside each other. And God is the Lamb.
Other than that, Astronosis is coming up soon. Hope to see you there. And don't forget you can also stream it remotely. And beyond all remote ticket buyers, participants who attend will also have access to all recordings afterward. Get thee thy cheap tickets now on the way to the nunnery. Also, for both subscribers and non-subscribers, I'll include some ethereal content provided by the amazing Rhyme. It's called B. My friend Rhyme always comes at you hard with that Gnostic ethos. Keep that in mind. Let us do our interview with Enna, and let us fulfill Sophia's rescue operation once and for all. Return to the light and be the best possible humans. What do you think, Frank Griffin from the series Godless? Where are we, and where are the dark gods?
Good book says, man lays down like a lamb, stays down.
You are no man of God.
God? What God? Mister, you clearly don't know where you are. Look around. There ain't no higher up around here to watch over you and your young'uns. This here's the paradise of the locust, the lizard, the snake. It's the land of the blade and the rifle. It's godless country. And the sooner you accept your inevitable demise, the longer you all gonna live. You know, if you think about it, same God made you and me also made a rattlesnake. That just don't make no sense. All man can count on is himself. That's the truth.
This is the AM Bide interview. And with us, we have the great pleasure of being joined by Enna Reittort to discuss her book, Krivda, the Godtrix Against the Matrix. Enna, thank you very much for coming on the show.
And thank you so much, Miguel, for having me. It really is. It's an honor. And you know what? It's an honor to be listening to your voice live. You have one of the most lovely voices on the internet.
Oh, well, thank you very much. As I say, if only my children agreed with that, because my voice does not charm or pipe them to do their chores when I talk. But maybe I'll teach them how to listen to the podcast. And with us too, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how you doing?
I'm fine, Miguel, and glad to be here with you and Enna. And I got my jar of green pills now, since in the Matrix you have the red pill and the blue pill. So since in honor of Enna's appreciation of nature, I got my green pills out. So we can take some green pills tonight.
So Enna, where are you today and how did you get there? It's fascinating what you're doing right now, just looking at your website.
I live in Thailand. I got here, because I had to get here. It wasn't pre-planned. And I've become a peasant, which has probably been the most life-opening turn in my life. And I live on a farm. Right now, I'm in a hotel room because on the farm, which is not really a farm by Western standards, it's a very, like what you would call primitive, in a sort of luxuriant, exotic kind of sense. But there are just so many chickens and geese and whatnots. They are so bloody noisy, and the internet is not very reliable. So when I have things to do seriously on the internet, I take a room at the local hotel, and there are no chickens.
There's no chickens. Well, that's wonderful. So you basically, in your book, you talk about being a kafir. So you yourself are walking the walk, right? You're just not writing about it. You decided to embrace this lifestyle.
Well, it chose me. I mean, I can't say that I voluntarily chose it, but before Thailand, I went to India, which was the last country in the world. I feared India more than any other place in the world. For a globetrotter, that was kind of weird. But India has her ways, Mother India. And so I landed there and I was hooked. And I was especially hooked by this fakir path, which, unbelievably, in a country like India that has the greatest number of gods in the world, they are the people who loudly and convincingly affirm that there are no gods, at least for them, and that there are no religions, and that there are no priests, and that consequently what they're after is their direct connection with whatever you want to call it, the higher self, the absolute, the whatever. And so what is really striking is how sophisticated their philosophy and their worldview were amongst people who were predominantly illiterate. And, they were at the other end of the social spectrum. They were really despised by all the higher caste people, but they went around saying there is no bloody caste. There are only two things that they call jati, which means birth. And that is translated as caste, which is, I imagine that the English translation and the influence of the British Raj amplified the difficulties that were inherent in having different social strata that were kind of codified religiously and culturally, but they were not as rigid and as oppressive. So basically, according to the fakir, there are only two jati, the male and the female. And that's the whole name of the game.
And so they've got this extremely esoteric path, which is on the fringe. It really is the extreme fringe of both Tantra and Sufism. They are a mix of Tantra, Sufism, indigenous, whatever, beliefs and cultures were there earlier. Quite a bewildering mix. But they are, to me, the purest humanists that I've ever encountered in any culture in the world. And so, of course, I was hooked. And they did not teach me the easy way because, well, as you can well imagine, you don't learn these things in any easy fashion, especially as a foreigner. But I just, immersion did its job. And so that's, that particular chapter is a very long story. One day I'll probably write a book about it. But, and that completely, of course, it changed everything for me. There was no way I could go back and live in the West. At the same time, when I was living amongst those people, I experienced the transition for them from being this extremely self-assured humanist path and falling into the grip of the money god. And they called it the god of money. And I picked up that little anecdote at the time, which I found striking, but it's only in the writing of Krivda that it really acted as a trigger for me, where I realized that there was, in fact, a continuity all the way from, the gods of Mesopotamia, through the gods of antiquity, through the Christian god, in the way it was orchestrated to be. And then when we all went secular, well, we converted very smoothly into the religions of the money god, the science god, the vaccine god, the medicine god, the everything god. And they all operate the same bloody way. The same structure. So the book basically gives a long, big first part to how a religious religion, a religion of a religious god, as opposed to a secular god, gets established, where we have, a superb case study of the Christian religion, how it gets established with the institution, the personnel, the places, the reorganization of time, of geography, the imperial ambitions, and of course the modus operandi, which, with its overt and its covert sides, and its underlying sacrificial wherewithal, let's say. And so once you've seen that structure in the Christian religion, and you look at the religion of the money god, and you look at the religion of the science god, well, they've changed the color of the robes, but basically it's the same structure. And it produces, a variation of mind control that becomes increasingly sophisticated. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah, you do a wonderful job. You bring a lot of, you tie in a lot of the great research of many individuals, many that have been guests on the show, like Pierre Sabac, Gary Lachman, Dr. Joseph Farrell, Jason Ressa-Drajani, the philosopher, and so forth. And you create this pretty serious and grim picture, but you also bring the solutions at the end. And as we were just talking about, the way of the kefir, as Gurdjieff called it, is one of the solutions, and your solutions are great. But why don't we start with something simple, and then we can start unpacking your research and your book. And that is a simple question for the audience. What exactly is Krivda?
Well, first you have to pronounce it right. And since I do believe you are Hispanic, Miguel.
Portuguese, yes, but I live
Portuguese.
in Portuguese.
Oh.
So Portuguese, I would say Krivda.
Exactly. Exactly.
Accent. Okay.
Okay. So, but the juice in it is to really roll the R. It's Krivda. And kriv, the root kriv means crooked. Okay. And it's the partner, the alter ego of pravda, which means truth, justice as one single concept. Truth and justice cannot be dissociated. In the ancient Russian tradition. So yeah, I bring in stuff from Russia because I lived in actually communist Russia in my adolescence. I spent 3 extremely formative years there that put into perspective, albeit incomprehensibly for me at the time, but it put into perspective the advantages and the prerogatives of the Western world. And I saw what absolutely fantastic people the Russians were, and the other people from the republics that I met. And so, well, I learned Russian pretty well. Went to university there for my last year there, and I really learned Russian with a forced regimen of Marx and Lenin in Russian every week. And so, well, I really learned Russian.
Yeah.
But I also learned to drink vodka and to have long philosophical conversations with my pals. And boy, that was something I was never getting and would never get in the West. So, let's leave aside the isms. My basic understanding is that the Russians, the Soviet people, they humanized communism. And really, just as parenthetically, after the Second World War, how could a nation of slaves build itself up to superpower capacity to stand up to the USA, apart from the need of the Rothschilds and other such sweet people to have, the enmity to keep chaos going or whatever? Apart from that, how would they have developed the best athletes, the best dancers, the best classical musicians, the most extraordinary research, cutting edge stuff on scalar waves and things like that, were not even, they were just perhaps beginning to be talked of in the West. How would that have happened? And the degree of literacy, the degree of intelligence was just, really phenomenal. So, and later on, I continued marinating whenever I could in the Russian juice, so to speak. And I went further into more of the folk aspects, which ultimately is my guide for everything that I write now. I'm guided mainly by the folk traditions because that is what everybody misses. And that's where I have to bring in the anthropologist. It's fakir, it's not kafir. Kafir, kafir is a kafir lime, if you want.
Yeah, I was just fakir. Giving the kids some yogurt this afternoon, so it probably stayed in my head.
That's okay. No, I mean fakir, and fakir is a generic term that just means poor,
right?
But poor in a very rich sense. So there. Consequently, looking at everything through the lens of, okay, we have this or that piece of information as per history, which we know is largely refabricated. How would the little people look at this under the circumstances of whatever the king was, whatever we may know from actual history? And so it's in that vein also that the book is written, because for the past, well, by now it's been 25 years that I've been marinating amongst the little people, namely and preferably in the countryside, where there is relatively less contamination, or there was less contamination, although that's no longer true, from the so-called high culture of the cities. And you when you have that kind of perspective, and you have been humble enough to listen, to just listen and just watch, and it can be phenomenally boring, for the urban person that needs to be constantly keep the mind busy all the time. I went through the initiation of boredom, which is really, really powerful, because then you start noticing the little details that are so significant. And And then you learn to understand how silence is meaningful. And then you don't just look for the linear explanation, a straight answer to a direct question, which is not going to come in the right way. The same question the next day is going to give a different answer, if not the opposite. So you have to, I've had to recalibrate my intellectual Western brain to kind of operating like local people. And that's been a fantastic thing to learn. So all of that, to go back now to Krivda. Krivda is the partner of Pravda. Pravda, truth, justice. Kriv is crooked. Mm-hmm. Some people, in a very linear way, say that Krivda is just the opposite of Pravda, and so it means lies. No, it's much more subtle than that. And that is the whole power of religions, of gods and priests. It's the crookedness. So consequently, I translate it as meaning crooked truth, truth made crooked, whereby it becomes increasingly hard to weed out which is the crooked part and which is the actual part of real truth. So Krivda, in fact, it's a very, very powerful word in the old Russian tradition. Very few people now use the word, but when I heard it, and I was not aware of it, when it was gifted to me by a Russian friend, I felt chills going down my spine. So, that's also the physical. When a word is powerful, it's going to possess your body. So I knew that was the title of the book. And no matter that nobody knows what Krivda means, it's going to be the title of the book. And, the marketers can think whatever they want.
I think the word will eventually become more common. I liked it. Krivda.
Yes, you've got it.
We'll test Vance too in a few minutes to see how he does with it. Yeah, it is true. I mean, obviously, as they say, misinformation is sometimes mixing the truth and the lies and creating a literal mind control, a little mind parasites and viruses. And your book does such a good job. Again, for the audience, she breaks it down into three parts: the religious god, part 1, under the money god, part 2, and under the digital tech god, part 3. And these are these psychic forces, egregores. Enna deals a lot with the idea of egregores, which we've done much in these shows. And it shows how this has happened. But the truth is, this has happened for a long time, right, Enna? This has happened before civilization. We were created to be slaves. And I like that you work so hard on your etymology. For example, you say that the Russian word rabota means, it comes from rab, meaning slave. And it could be the origin of the word robot. So it's ironic because we were created to be these working machines from the get-go, right?
Well, that's the version that seems to have a lot of currency now. But I mean, I think more and more people agree that we've been tinkered with, we've been tweaked in many ways. How many times over the eons? Well, we don't know yet. Perhaps that's hidden in the Vatican library. Who knows? Perhaps we'll get through to that.
Yeah.
Perhaps perhaps in the future we could get 10 teams of top-notch remote viewers to look into that target, and we'd be able to find out more. My understanding is that, and this is closer, I think, to the Gnostic story, is that there has been a period when our ancestors, or our proto-ancestors, and this would be way before the Lucys and the bits of bones that have been found, way before that, we're actually much more multidimensional than we know ourselves to be. We are those multidimensional beings, but we do not know it. And it's really hard work to exercise to bring those aspects of multidimensionally back online now. However, I do sense that there was a time when we truly were on this planet as the luminous child, who was not just a child, but a partner of this planet, Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
And that a lot of the diversity that exists on this planet was seeded by us, the diversity of different species and things like that. And my, let's say, contemplative journeys tend to indicate the same to me. And I get the same feeling through Russian sources also. I can't assert this, but I really have this deep, now that I've gone through this bloody journey of Krivda and I've come out the other end, I get to feel much more about what it truly is to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've digested the black pill, you've processed it and you've recovered the energy that it was stealing from you, you start having access to other parts of you that, well, in a scientific era, I have no way of validating. And I'm a hard-nosed intellectual. Not for nothing was I scholarly trained, and I'm grateful for that too. But I'm also grateful for the ability that I've acquired with the little people to live in my heart and in my guts. And so I do not think that we were born a slave race. But I think we must have agreed at some kind of cosmic soul agreement level that, okay, that was fun, that was nice, but perhaps we need a bit more of a challenge. And so, some tweaking was organized for us to become, or at least part of us, not all. It does not seem that, the Anunnaki type of guys, tweaked with the whole of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
It seems there were others in other parts of the world, and mainly, it seems, around the North Pole, who retained much more of the old dignity of who we were. So, and there's pretty serious research to that effect happening in Russia. Really? Some of it with nationalistic purposes. So, I mean, that too has to be taken with a grain of salt. But they're coming to certain conclusions which strike me. There again, my heart gut feeling feels that there really is something there. So once again, none of this can be scientifically, as we say, validated now, especially since we've divorced science from the science of the seers. In the Vedic times, the science that they invented, the science of the zero and the science of Ayurveda, these things were visionary achievements. They were not done with computers. So, as long as we have science divorced from real visionary capability, we're not going to go anywhere. And, we're going to we'll continue persecuting, the Teslas of the world and the Bedinis and all the people who are working on 0-point energy and things like that. So it's up to us. It's up to us little people to start doing it for ourselves. And to start, showing to each other that we can learn a hell of a lot, and we can be knowers of a lot of stuff only and simply by reaccessing who we truly are. And it's not an easy task, for sure.
No, indeed. But yeah, I was listening to Genesis, the carpet crawlers, and there's Peter Gabriel saying, you got to get in to get out. And as your work has shown, there's forgetting. There is a lot of programming through the years that has made us forget our origins, which are probably from the stars, and how we were different and how we fell. But when do you think, talking about the God of religion, when do you think the war-mongering Yahweh, as you call him, came into being? Or did we give him the power? Did we create this egregore?
Well, I don't think anything, basically, because I'm not a specialist in Hebrew, nor am I a specialist in that history. Most of the stuff that's in this book is just me bringing together pieces of a puzzle. Mm-hmm. And those pieces are provided by people who've gone much deeper on each one of those pieces than I shall ever be able to. So, thank them for that. So the main person that I rely upon for the whole Yahweh story is this Italian, Mauro Bilino, who is becoming quite famous beyond Italy now. His stuff is translated into English. And every one of his books has a title that says, that the Bible doesn't talk about God. So it's quite obvious from his literal rendition of the Hebrew version of the Ancient Testament, it's quite clear that Yahweh is an ET who has all sorts of high-tech devices. He's an ET warlord, basically. And his morality is non-existent. He's not at all a nice guy. So when was he around exactly? For me, 1,000 years, before the Common Era is good enough. It could be earlier. How much of an overlap is there between the Anunnaki period and the Yahweh period, considering that the Hebrew nation did not yet exist as such? And Yahweh will probably have been a factor in the constitution of a Hebrew identity for those particular people. So I am not going to venture any kind of, guesswork beyond that. But to me, and not just to me, I mean, Farrell and others, they all see the same continuity from the Anunnaki down through to Yahweh, and then the reworking of that to produce the New Testament. So we're talking basically, what we're coming to now is the culmination of some 6,000 years of a particular program, which organized what we call civilization, which we think is a very good thing. But people should remember that civilization is civis, which means city, or polis, which we have in politics, which also means city in Greek. And so this is the civilized urban world that builds itself and its wealth on the backs of the toiling peasants, who have since then forever been poor. And if the peasants are made poor, it's also nature, since they work in nature, and they have nature understanding and nature mysticism. All of those things have been made poor, exploitable, enslavable, commodizationable, and can be used as sacrificial resources. All of it. It's one big package, which also belongs to the feminine. Let's put that back in the Gnostic perspective. So it's quite simple, actually. Fundamentally, it's very simple. If you look at it from the perspective, this is another thing. The book tries not to look at it in terms of, pure history, pure this, that, and the other. I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of the little people, that's to say the bulk of humanity, from the perspective of the gods themselves, be they egregores or actual ET figures like Yahweh or the others. Right. Yahweh seems real enough to me, along with all his Elohim, acolytes and pals. And from the perspective of beyond the gods, if you try to look at it from above their perspective, because the perspective of the gods is basically, it's the perspective of the demiurge. They are only capable of simulating. Mm-hmm. Simulating, which involves deceit, manipulation. They are extremely inventive in those realms, but they're totally incapable of creativity. Okay? So if we try to look at all this history as far as we can, and bearing in mind that the dates are probably false, that so much has been twisted. But if we try to understand a logical thread running through this 6,000 year period and organized around a master program to enlist, to take over the human race and the planet, because actually they are extraordinary and they are not just this, backwater in this sort of forgotten edge of a limb of the galaxy. and they're totally, useless and helpless meat sacks and things like that. I mean, if you start disbelieving those things and you start looking at it from the perspective of beyond the gods, why the hell would the gods have been at us so systematically for these 6,000 years if there wasn't something really, really, really big at stake for them? So if you're looking at it from these three perspectives, from way below the grassroots, from way above the universe, and from, within the psychology of the gods or the egregores and the priests, the priesthoods that work together with them, who are possessed by them, well, then the whole thing makes sense. And lots of things that are completely cognitive dissonance inducing become clear as day, I think.
That's really well said, and I love it, and I agree with you. Yes, these the Gnostics would say that these mechanistic beings, these egregores, whatever this other, is definitely here to control us, to feed off of us. We can debate that, or people can have their views, but obviously there has been some continual trauma-based mind control, as you call it, that has cut off humanity from nature, from our inner selves, from the resources, and something is isolating and taking over and keeping all the good stuff, and it just keeps going, taking different shapes. So I think, like you said, once you take the red pill or the black pill, you really do need to take the black pill, like Nietzsche, go right into the abyss so you can go into the rainbow bridge where you find yourself and your purpose. So, but before I get into a tangent, Vance, do you have a question? Although first you must pronounce Krivda, as well as tell us what's faster, an African or a European swallow. Then you may speak, sir.
The ground speed, right, of the African or European swallow.
Yes, exactly.
Krivda. That's the way I would say.
Yay!
Yes. I had Spanish when I was in 8th grade, so I learned to roll. Oh, and German, of course, rolls R's too. But yeah, this is all good stuff. Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, the gods, quote unquote Yahweh or any other gods, wouldn't bother to play around with people unless they needed to. They have a need. They originally had a need. There's something that they don't have without binding. And the other thing came to my mind is religion. Like, just look at the word religion. It means to bind again. So here we are being bound by these religions and isms and so forth. So that's another thought. And oh, by the way, robota is a Slavic term that was the derivation of robot. It was RUR, the movie, was the first instance of it was a Czechoslovakian movie.
Wow.
So you were right. Yeah, that's where those are tied up. And also I was thinking, Enna, I think this is probably along the lines you were thinking. Don't you think it's interesting that the human body is weak compared to any other primate? Like chimpanzees are tremendously stronger, gorillas obviously so, and we have the mental capacity and power, to develop symbolic language and communicate with each other. But aside from that, we don't have hair. We're not very well suited to live on the planet without a lot of extra messing around like some other animals. Do you think that's evidence that we were tampered with along the way to be made into a slave organism?
I think so. Yeah, it makes sense. It would also make sense to consider it in terms of our togetherness with our ecosystems. Most of human cultures in ancient times, when we were not billions and billions on the planet, would have existed mainly in the tropical, subtropical parts of the world where, frankly, I mean, the human body is quite adequate to what it needs to do. And I don't see that when we were more multidimensionally attuned to both our own nature and to our environment, I don't see that the environment was so dangerous to us. So we wouldn't have needed all sorts of clothes and heating and things like that. We would have fed much more naturally, simply off fruits falling off from trees.
Yep.
I can say this because I live in the tropics here, and I can quite happily, live off fruits. It gives me a sense of what perhaps might have existed way, way, way back when.
But
Apart
if you
from
run
that,
into a Bengal tiger, then it's not so good. That's the problem.
yeah.
Is that what's the myth where Zeus creates, when he's creating the world, he gives eagles feathers, he gives the lion claws, he gives the cheetah speed, and then he's like, well, I'm out of tools, so I'm sorry, humans. So Prometheus has to say, I gotta get them fire, because we humans are pretty, as Vance was saying, we're pretty weak unless we can create humans and modify the environment.
Well, yes and no, but I mean, the fact is that we in this 21st century have come a long way in terms of actually weakening the physiology of who we are. Let's not forget that. Modern medicine has us believe that 5 centuries ago, or in the Middle Ages, or in antiquity, people were wretched. They had these wretchedly short lives and things like that.
They've done the study. The average Roman was probably 5 times our strength. Aborigines were pretty much superhuman because we were always active and in nature. We've weakened as a species, right?
Yeah, we have, and it's been deliberate. It's all part of the same thing, and if we start believing that we are weak physiologically, it is because the main gateway for the trauma-based mind control is through the body. Okay, it's basically, cutting you up, raping you. It's showing you how bloody weak you are. So, well, once you've been raped or cut up, you're certainly going to believe that you're weak, and you're going to be in fear. And then, the rest of the mind programming can happen increasingly easily. When you realize that you are dispensable, sacrificable, what have you, yes, you're going to start believing that you are weak, and you're going to start believing that you need all those tools, and you need more and more effective tools to be able to protect yourself and to conquer the world, because you still want to conquer the world, because you've got this brain that tells you that you have to conquer the world and have dominion over it. Wow. So there again, what kind of cognitive dissonance is that?
Big.
Okay, it's all cognitive dissonance. If you start looking into each particular kind of proposition of that type, it falls apart. The human body is so phenomenally resilient. It's just amazing. If you think of all the manipulation that's been done on us, all the people who are targeted individuals, how much shit they've been taking. It takes a long time to kill a targeted individual because we are extremely resilient. And there is a big part of us that learns from the things that ail us, that torment us, etc. If we can stay centered enough to use them as learning opportunities. I know it's that's a tall order. I'm not saying it's easy. But our bodies are, if you only look at the physicality of it, you may find us weak. But if you look at how our bodies are in constant communication with the other subtle layers of what we are, we're phenomenal. And animals know this. Great sages who've lived in the forests for centuries, they live among the wild animals, the venomous snakes, fearlessly. If you are fearless, the nasty animals are not going to attack you. They're going to attack you when they know you are weak. They smell that you are weak, and consequently, you need to be taken out of the pack. That's nature's rule. But if you can get to the point where you can have that trust in the reality of who you are, and that you are a partner of theirs in the forest or whatever it is, then, once the fear is taken out of the equation, and that again is a tall order for sure, but once the fear is taken out of the equation, everything falls into place. And there's no need to fear the elements and the situations and things like that. And it also has to do with not fearing death. That's another thing that they've programmed into us.
Very true.
Because when you die, and if you haven't done a good job in this life, you're going to go to hell, or you're going to have karma endlessly, life after life after life after life after life. Oh.
Yes, indeed. You're 100% right. Fear of death it's not being alive. There is no death. It's an illusion. Everything continues in some way or another, and everything is eternal in the moment. At the same time, Enna, one of the themes that is also prevalent in your book is the idea of sacrifice. And this is a fact that the ancients certainly believed in sacrifice to these hungry gods, children, humans, animals. The Hebrews were certainly doing all three, and it's all there in the Hebrew Bible and in other stories. But yeah, the disturbing one is, of course, children, Moloch. And this sacrifice, as you point out very well, is gone throughout history with what we do to children, how we torture them, how we sexualize them and abuse them. And today, of course, there's a huge problem with, again, the black market and child trafficking and child porn and all those horrors. But what do you think about this? This seems to play very much into the Gnostic idea that we have some dark gods who demand children the light, the undivided consciousness, or just sacrifice in general.
Yeah, that's a constant motif from the times of from the Mesopotamian times.
Yeah, Moloch and all those hungry
absolutely.
gods.
And I mean, Yahweh, Biglino shows very clearly in his literal translation how, Yahweh gives orders for the pyre, the place where sacrificial offerings are going to be burnt. He's very, very, very fastidious about exactly how long and how wide and how high, and the order in which everything has to be burnt and has to be holocausted, because that's the meaning of the word Holocaust. It means fully burnt. So now when people are talking of a Holocaust in other contexts, well, again, that's another word that isn't used the right way. But so being fully burnt. But it hasn't changed. And actually, over the past few decades, and now over the past few years, I'd say it has reached a fever pitch. And yes, the gods depend on sacrifice for different types of food, subtle food, and probably some, mainly subtle food. So it would be, the power that would be released for Yahweh, it was the power released from the human fat, the fat of young animals and the fat of young babies. Oh. It had something to do with, it relieved him because he was not terribly comfortable on Earth in these atmospheric conditions that were probably not suited to his ET constitution. But, later on, when these sacrificial things are celebrated no longer by ETs, but by priests to their own whatever gods, egregores, whatever it is, the powers and principalities that give them, the priests, to wield power over the mass of ignorant humanity. The sacrificial aspect is extremely physical. There is the consumption of the human flesh. In Islam, when they have Eid, I lived quite a bit in Bangladesh, which is a Muslim country, and it was just horrifying. The times of, the big festivals, once they had come out of the fasting of Ramadan, the slaughter of bovines was just absolutely, it was sickening. And, it pervaded the air in a way that, and so there's something about the smell of flesh that's being cut up, something about the smell of it, when it's roasted. There's something about the fragrance of mammals, animals and human animals, that has really very great power for somebody up there. But then beyond that, there's the enjoyment of the trauma inflicted on these victims, because the fear releases energy that feeds the gods. There are many, many levels that they feed upon. And basically, yes, we are just a resource. But what this indicates, once again, has to do with why the hell are they so intent on sacrificing, especially children? And this has to do with the mystery of what it is to be a human being. Because the children, while they are still, they live between the alpha state, they're still in alpha state until they're about 4 years old, 5 years old. So that is the magical time frame when you can touch their soul. So I think all this sacrificial aspect has to do also with somehow having access to the human soul, which is something that they don't have.
I would have to agree on that. Again, for the audience who don't think that the Hebrews did it, if you're under the power of it, these ancient gods, it was going to happen. You've got Jephthah's daughter. You've got, there's one part where Joshua very much sacrifices a whole bunch of prisoners to Yahweh. There is the part where I believe it's Saul brings the king of some tribe, and Samuel, the high priest, cuts him off on the temple, on the altar of Yahweh. So it's all over there, and it was all, like you say, the Enna, it's all there in the Mesopotamia and other places. I guess the one good thing about the Romans is that they hated children sacrifice. They hated the cult of Moloch. So that was one of the reasons for their dislike for Carthage. Obviously, Rome didn't stay a republic too often. The gods eventually got to even them and corrupted them hopelessly into the greatest war machinery that has never stopped. That just was a continuation. And through all of this, you see Jesus as a positive? I know you talk about Christianity's a death cult too, but Jesus himself, your view is he was an enlightened human?
Well, this is again not me. I've been using Italian sources, which I find very convincing, because they've been living next to the Vatican for a very long time, and they have an intimate acquaintance with that phenomenon. And so when sharp minds come up with clear explanations of, actually, this is staring you in the face, audience. It's just there. It's staring you in the face, and we're going to say it. So Esposito, who is a very proper historian, he's not going to be an incendiary kind of alternative guy, but he just decided to look at the sources. He took the apocryphals, he took the Bible, he took other historical texts from that period, and he collated, and he found the smallest common denominator from all of these. And from the smallest common denominator, culled from these different sources, he decided to piece together a plausible story of the man Jesus. And why I loved this particular rendition of Jesus is because he was looking at the man, and he was not going for the spiritualization of the Son of God and all this. He was looking at what it is about a man that is so extraordinary within the particular situation of Judea and Galilee under Roman occupation, and the whole turmoil of the Jewish people because of the collusion of the priesthood with the Romans and the constant impoverishment of the little people. I mean, the equivalent of what's happening now. And so this guy comes up, and, Esposito, this virgin birth, that was, of course, spiritualized after the event, but basically his mother got raped probably by a Roman soldier. It happened all the time. And then Papa Joseph was a nice guy. He was extremely disturbed by this situation because nobody had seen anybody with young Mary. So it was very, very bizarre. But at the same time, he must have felt sorry for her. She was probably only just nubile. They were not yet fully married. She would have been 13, 14. She was still a young kid. And so, Jesus is born a bastard. He's not born the Son of God. He's born a bastard. And, I can imagine that in that kind of society, it would have been absolutely terrible, especially if you felt that you were different. You already knew that you were somehow different from, most other people. So when he gets kind of taken under the wing of his cousin, John, the so-called Baptist, who is from another branch of the family, on both sides, very respectable priesthood families. And John has made the choice, like many others, to go and be, to go and live in the desert and to be sort of ascetically seeking the truth and this, that, and the other. And they make a perfect match. And then there is the extraordinary understanding by Esposito of the baptism, whereby John has people sort of, dunk themselves in the water and confess, in air quotes, their sins, in air quotes. And the extraordinary thing is that they scream their, in air quotes, sins in jubilation. Why? Because they are discarding, by confessing, I'm confessing that I'm a piece of shit at the bottom end of society. I'm confessing that I'm a completely downtrodden, worthless slave. I'm confessing all this, and I'm thus releasing it. And the water that is being poured on me is renewing me as a full human being. Now, if you look at the ritual of baptism that John inaugurated like that, you can see how powerful it was in terms of social disruption and religious, and the religious aspect of how, as how, religion keeps the mayonnaise or the cement of society, keeps it holding together.
Right.
And so then Jesus, the bastard, he has this baptism and it completely transforms him. And he becomes this charismatic preacher along with John, and they both go around and they're having a very great amount of success. Consequently, John is arrested and he's soon killed. And then Jesus has to do his thing on his own. And, then the whole thing continues all the way up to the great crucial scene in the temple when he turns over the tables of the banksters and the money lenders, because the religion of the money god was already there in total collusion with the temple, as it had been since Mesopotamian times, except nobody had acknowledged that that money was a god. That was only acknowledged much, much later, and is still not acknowledged by most Western people who use money. So
Jesus did acknowledge it. He did say, "You can follow me or Maimon." So he kind of knew, and you researched very well. This started with Babylon, with under Marduk and civilization and commerce. Yeah, so you're 100% right. This God was undercover, but Jesus did catch him.
Well, he had no trouble, because if I look at him in human terms, of the guy who's been, an outcast of society because he was a bastard, and he has this total renewal of his self-worth, and he goes around preaching with John, who must have been very charismatic, and he gets empowered by this. When you have that kind of empowerment, and you've been through the suffering of having been an outcast of society, but you've gained your power as a human, and strictly and only as a human, without any trappings of luxury, wealth, ancestry, what have you, just because you're a human being, then you can see through the bullshit. Not difficult at all. And, the little people all over the place knew perfectly well that it was wrong for the money people to be at the temple, if the temple was really about some kind of really spiritual, lofty, true, benevolent God entity. So he was basically, showing the truth. And, that didn't go down too well. And so they turned him into the ultimate sacrifice. And he's being sacrificed to this day. Every time, people, and, I say this with a lot of tender respect for people's faith. But still, I mean, poor Jesus is being sacrificed on the cross permanently in all these churches where you've got this. It's striking, the starkness of the naked figure on the bare cross, surrounded in general by all sorts of gold and glitter and beautiful paintings and elaborate, especially in Europe, where I spent, a good many years of my life. The contrast is so absolutely stark. It's weird. So anyway, poor Jesus, the man, is being sacrificed, every day. And people are unknowingly, playing along with this sacrifice.
This has been a wonderful interview for the audience. Definitely check out the book, Krivda, and check out Enna's website, Ennariet or books. I better pronounce it, and I'll have it on the show notes. ENNAREITTORT books.com. Any other websites, or is that where the audience should go to check you out?
Well, if they want the book, they can go straight to a company called Book Baby that deals especially with indie authors, and they distribute to all the big ones. But it seems that Amazon has the book either in a pre-order status or as out of stock. So, you figure what that means. It should be available on Amazon, but it's not really. So the safest place to go is Book Baby. They do print on demand and they ship immediately. So you can go straight there and look for Enna, Reittort, or just Krivda, I suppose. You could. But I'll send you, if you want to put in the show notes, I'll send you the link.
Sure, no problem.
Miguel.
Yeah, no problem at all.
For those who are interested, I've just started the Substack page.
I have subscribed, so I'm looking forward.
Yeah, thank you. So people can go and look for me there. People generally have questions or comments or stuff, as they read the book. So I no longer can answer everybody sort of individually, although I would very much like to. But I'm working on the next book, which is on the solutions side. I don't want to, I've done my Dante's sort of tour of the inferno, of the different levels of hell, and I want to provide positive input now. So the next book is on positive stuff.
Wonderful. Yes. Well, this book has solutions, so definitely check them out. But we are at the end. First, I'd like to say, Vance, thanks for keeping us company.
Oh, it's my pleasure as usual. I think that we heard a lot of great advice. Definitely getting back in touch with our true spiritual and human nature, as opposed to what the machine wants us to think about ourselves, is great advice. And I will definitely take that to heart. And so thank you, Enna.
Thank you. And don't be sacrificed.
I won't.
Whatever you do. If you see a pyramid, don't climb to the top in the middle of the day, Vance.
All right. I'll try not to there.
Wonderful. Well, Enna, thank you very much for coming on Aeon Byte, and we look forward to your future work.
Thank you so much, Miguel. It's been a pleasure. You're really a wonderful host.
Oh, thank you. And you write wonderful books. So we met at the right time.
Great. Lovely. And thank you. I mean, when you ask your questions, I have trouble following you because I'm listening to your voice. There's something about your voice, Miguel, really.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I was a singer in a former life.
I have no musical ear, so that's a problem too.
It's not a problem. You've got it natural. You're natural.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Awesome. Well,
lovely. Great. I mean, the more people we can black pill,
the better. Yes. One soul at a time, one awakening at a time.
Nah, 100 at a time. 1,000.
It's going to be more with this interview. Trust me.
Thank you very, very much.
And there you have it, my beloved truth seekers. Enna bringing down the Archon house and the sun and the moon and the stars shine bright above. In our second part, Enna gets deep into techno-mind control, the evil shenanigans of the Rockefellers, and eugenics. But she counters all this iniquity talking about Sophia and her own journey to becoming an organic farmer in Thailand. Enna will share more on Bengali mysticism, as well as connecting more to nature. At one point, Vance defends technology, and it's an interesting back and forth. Yet we can all agree these dark gods need to be vanquished from our souls. So please become an AB Prime member, Red Circle subscriber, or patron at Patreon for the full release of The Goddess in the Matrix. Only $6.99 for AB Prime, or $4.99 at Red Circle, or whatever you want to pledge on Patreon. If you find value in this content, please support. Support can be also in the form of shekel donations to PayPal or the US mail. There is also a link on the show notes if you want to donate via Stripe. I also have the merch store and an Amazon wish list. Get your popular Not Today Archons t-shirt today. Finding Hermes is going strong, and so are our virtual Alexandria exclusive private meetings that include exercises loyal to the ancient Gnostics and a monthly Q&A. If you want to understand and experience Gnosticism in its full impact and liberating secrets, become an official citizen of the virtual Alexandria. I've done presentations on the Sethians, the Gospel of Thomas, the secrets of the serpent Gnostics, Gnostic sex magic, and why we live in Gnostic times, and covered a lot of other sects and their rituals. Don't forget my voiceover availability. I'll bring you stellar voiceover with down-to-earth professionalism, no matter what project or scope you need. I'm also on Rockfin or Odyssey if crypto is your bag. If you need help with all of these choices, just message my ass. I'm always here to help, and I truly appreciate your help. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real. Hello and goodbye, as always.
Be who? Sometimes I think it's me that is the bad guy. Billie Eilish was right. Here I am, blaming the world, while these reptilians are running it, and I am wasting away, stuck in my own propaganda, stuck in my own blame. They tell us to be someone, be a part of, be unique, rhyme, be fuddled because business became what was meant to be about the truth, and the truth never sells its soul. Okay. Where am I? Is this planet Earth? Just leave me be. Is someone watching me? Sometimes it feels like I'm pinned to plaque, and there's these beings walking past, staring at Earth's memorabilia, examining all that went psychedelia. I thought I'd be in a dark room, loud tunes, looking to make a vow soon, but the information was censored, and intact into my brain went wild from nanoparticles, but like magazine articles that taught you want to be the woman all the guys want to fuck and the internet girls want to be. Be. Who did I want to be? That's right, as a child I wanted to be. And so I still keep the promise to the flower on the sill, where I feel that the right should be spoken for the right reasons rhyme. This is my last time. This be my last soliloquy.
This is the end for rhyme. Oh, you've been a good girl, Angel White, and you've ironed dress. We have waited too long, watching you suffer, not being watched. And that was the deal we told you. You'd have your attention in trade for your soul, flexion. But you wanted to tell the truth. You didn't want to show off the cools, dripping diamond skin. We can dress you, media press your sins. These are the dark ages and we can't have a fighter. You follow our rules or you'll be hided. But look, hovering now are you, rope chained over the earth's view. And this will be your last soliloquy, as we, before reptilian lords, need to make sure you will not tell the people what is important. Music, poetry, what a whack funny thing you humans made up. Don't you hear? That's why we went in on fear and planted the seed in your industry to comb the masses with immorally. Look at the stars. See, this is your last round. So get ready to welcome to the tank of snake selves.